Good morning, everyone. My name is Jay Lane. I'm running for Senate District 1, and I wanted to come up here and tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm doing this. I grew up on a family farm in Gates County. Whole family worked together, farmed together. It was great, great way to grow up, and I knew I wanted to raise my kids on a farm and do the same thing with them. Um, when I was 14 years old, my dad passed, and my uncle took over the farming operation, and he and I didn't see eye to eye on some things. So I decided to go a different direction. Um, when I graduated high school, I started working over in Elizabeth City on a farming operation, and worked my way up to manager there in just under a year. But the timing of that lined up with me going to diesel technology school in Virginia Beach, so I had to manage the farming operation by day and had trade school at night. So it was a lot of work. I learned a lot. I had to grow up quick. Being an 18-year-old with very little experience, managing men three times your age and an operation that size, you learn a lot about yourself, agronomy, business, personnel management, maintenance, and then juggling that with school and getting married and all that stuff at the same time. It was a whirlwind, but I wouldn't trade it. It was a good time in my life, and kind of found my place. So I knew it was in agriculture to some capacity. Didn't know how successful I would be starting a farm, but I knew that was the route I'd have to take in order to farm and do it with my son. Um, a couple years into the management thing, I had some farmers around us start to retire and came to me wanting to rent some land to someone. And I had developed a relationship with these guys and rented their land. And my wife and I went out on our own and started our farming operation. And in February of 2020, I went from farm manager for some of my wife's family to owning my own company and farming 3,600 acres of my own. And it is a difficult thing to navigate when you're 20 years old going to the bank needing $3.5 million to operate. So, with no experience or real knowledge of how things actually work. So it was a very difficult and long learning experience. I'm still learning. I do not have it figured out, but I love it. And, while I have learned to be successful in farming, I have also learned why it is so difficult for people to get involved in farming, small or large. The barrier of entry is insane. Um, and I could argue that any real small business these days is tough to get into. So I empathize with any industry, but especially agriculture, and that's where my passion lies is in farming. And the whole reason I wanted to farm is because I didn't get to do it with my dad, and I knew one day we would eventually have kids and hopefully a son. And God blessed me with a son who was actually born on my dad's birthday. So as if I needed another sign that we were heading the right direction. That was it for me. And he's 1 year old now, and I get him involved as much as I can. He doesn't pay attention that great, but we'll get there. Um, Now, as far as politics go, I got involved at the General Assembly a couple years ago, just trying to be a part of things and be around because the direction that farming was headed was not a good one, and still isn't. But I started noticing that our leaders, whether it be in a commodity group or in government, weren't necessarily um, in farming or didn't really have a real understanding. And I do believe that when you have people in influential positions that are not affected by the policy that they vote on or write, that it doesn't necessarily mean as much to them. And it meant the world to me because that is my world. And I thought, I need to take the time to get involved in this thing because, you know, I was not satisfied with how it was going, and my whole purpose for farming was to do it with my son, who's the next generation, and I didn't see how in the world we were going to really swing that. I mean, in 10 years, Lord knows what the ag industry is going to look like. We're going through so much consolidation right now that, we're rapidly approaching the danger zone with bankruptcies and consolidations, not only in ag, in farming itself, but in seed, feed, fertilizer, every input that goes into this business is just starting to monopolize year after year, more so. Um, which is a dangerous thing for me as a farmer, but it's also a dangerous thing for literally everyone because we're all consumers. Last time I checked, at least 3 times a day. So I think we all need to be paying attention to this. Maybe not as closely as us in the farming world, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. Um, but I got involved in the policy side of things, just trying to advocate for commercial ag and the lifestyle that is farming, because I saw it disappearing as we knew it, and I didn't like it. But that was the extent of my political work, was just getting involved at that level, and then Senator Hannig said he was going to run for Congress, so the seat opens up, and I have a little bit of name recognition in Raleigh, and got a call saying, here's your chance. If you want a farmer in Raleigh, you complain so much about foreign policy, put up or shut up, you need to run. So I said, no, not doing it. I don't have time. And then a couple of days went by. I really considered some stuff and thought, I'm not running because I want to. I'm running because I believe that I need to. Not saying I have all the answers, but I definitely need to take the opportunity before me to achieve the goal that I set out to do, which is influence ag policy. So I think it's important. Um, and then as soon as we started that whole Senate consideration process, and we started calling around, and the support from leadership was a little overwhelming. It was enormous. They also realized the importance of the ag field in Raleigh. I mean, it is our state's biggest industry, it's agriculture. So, they understand how crucial it is to have someone there with real world knowledge and experience. I am only 27. I've only been in business for 6 years, but I am very passionate about maintaining our way of life. And they know that. They knew that before they got me involved in this whole thing. So, that everyone's on the same page as far as I know. Um, and with that led to endorsements from a ton of senators, a lot of them in leadership. And I know that there's been some concern about, some commercial fishing stuff. And I know the whole shrimp gate thing and the endorsements and their involvement. And I just want to, make it very clear that, and I thought that it was implied as a farmer and as an ag advocate, that me understanding that the risks and the difficulties of producing food for a living, whether it be from the land or from the water, we're all in the same boat. Um, we're all overregulated. Farming nowhere near as regulated as the fisheries, but I feel like I could empathize better than, say, a lawyer or any other politician that we'd send to Raleigh, because it affects me for real. So, of course, I made this clear with anyone who offered to endorse me, and also, went into this knowing that I would either um, be offered or ask for all of these endorsements at some point in time. But I wanted to make it clear, hey, I agree with the Republican agenda. I am a conservative. I always have been. However, these are some things that I disagree with. This trawling ban was one of them. I think um, everybody understood clearly where I stood on that. So, and they were still willing to endorse me and work with me and wanted me there in the caucus to carry their agenda forward and be a part of things. But also, having this real world experience and the business experience, the emotional, development and um, the wherewithal to navigate these issues and try to help leadership understand, this is the real world impact, economic or environmental or whatever. Another point that I made was you have environmentalists and you have stewards. They are not the same thing, and there are different motives for each of them. But I do believe that one has a better interest than the other, and that being the steward. You have all these conservation services, you have all this money flying around. If people would listen to farmers, listen to fishermen, no one would protect the environment better than us. So that's my opinion. I stated it to them clearly. They were still more than willing to work with me and offer public endorsements. So I am proud of those endorsements. I appreciate them. I'm also proud of my stance and stand strong with the ag field being logging, fishing, farming, the whole 9 yards. That is me. That is why I'm running. Um, so I made it clear to them. I wanted to make it clear to you. Hate the trawling ban idea. Terrible idea. But I overall like the Republican agenda. Love the majority in the General Assembly, and I hope that it stays that way. But I didn't want to get to Raleigh and start spinning wheels immediately and take a year and a half to gain these friendships and relationships. I want to get to work for District 1 the second I get there. So I just wanted to make that clear. Another thing that I agreed with the Republican leadership on was their ability to balance the budget. I think they have done a tremendous job with the budget. I have very little to say about that. Of course, being a conservative, want a balanced budget and responsible fiscal policy. I think everyone could get on board with that. Don't see why anyone would not. The only thing I will say to that is some emergency relief stuff we maybe need to look into, kind of ramping up or it becoming more robust, because our coastline is really taking a beating right now, and the resources aren't maybe necessarily where they need to be there. So that will be a discussion I'll have pretty early on with my colleagues there in Raleigh. And you saw the FEMA response to Helene. They're still trying to get money out there. We're over a year past when people need the money, need the resources, need the help. So that's atrocious. FEMA is, the feds should be there to help. And I think, they are there to help, but the wheels of the federal government, of government in general, just turn slow as crap. So we need to have money locally to get resources out to disaster affected areas, whether it be from the mountains to the coast. My area and my priority being the coast. And then the hurricanes aren't getting any more or less frequent. You can rely on one of those every other year, at least on the coastline, and it'll affect somebody. So you want to have those funds in place to help out with that. Lord forbid, when that happens. So, but that's the only thing, I have to say about that. We'll work toward that and get deeper into it as time goes on. But being a farmer, of course, I need to talk about my thoughts on ag policy. I want the absolute best for anyone producing a food source for a living. It is extremely difficult, but we love our lifestyle, so we want to maintain prosperity. None of us are getting rich from it. We know that. We just love it. And we are lucky to be able to do what we do, but we need to protect that. We need people in places to protect that. Overregulation is horrible for anyone. One of the things I told leadership in Raleigh is, oftentimes folks, legislative success is measured on the amount of bills you passed in a session or in a term or in your career. And I see it exactly the opposite. I want my career or my tenure in the Senate to be the success there to be measured on the amount of bills we didn't pass. As far as regulation goes, I think anytime a regulatory agency or the government gets involved in regulation, I think every single time it makes things worse for everyone involved. So that's just my take on that. We need to keep the government out of telling us how to operate growing our food or producing food. When I get to Raleigh, I'll be an ag reformer. Um, I have a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas, a lot of new ideas, and leadership in the ag committee, and they've all expressed their interest in working with me, and I'm excited about that. That is the reason I'm running is for that specifically. But you know, I've made the point several times. We have enough lawyers in Raleigh. We need to get real people there, real people that are affected by these policies, and that understand, where we're going to go and what's going to happen if this or that policy is successfully moved through the General Assembly and then signed into law. A couple things, that I want to mention in some policy ideas is it drives me crazy how hard it is to get a CDL nowadays. We need to fix that. We need to go back to the way it was 5 years ago. We need to streamline that process, not only for our ag field, but for truckers in general. I mean, that employs a lot of people, and there's no good reason to make it more difficult to get a CDL. It's not like our roads are safer because of it. It's just more difficult to get a CDL. So we need more of those. We need an easier path to get a CDL. I'd like it just to revert to the way it was. Plenty of schooling, plenty of laws. Leave it alone. Don't reinvent the wheel on this one. Another thing I'd love to see actually as a farmer is in Virginia. They use the farm use tag. Just says farm use, and there's no reason that our farmers, loggers, fishermen should be tagging or required to tag vehicles commercially. Yes, they are hauling commerce, but they are ag goods hauling from the point of production to the market. So there's an argument to be made there, but I would love to see that happen in North Carolina. I can't stand a lot of things going on in Virginia, but I do believe they've got that one right. And speaking of Virginia and what just happened there, um, a Democrat wave there, which kind of scares me, honestly. I don't know how that happened. I know a lot of people in Virginia, and every single one of them did not vote for that. But anyway, as far as the Democrats go, I have never been a Democrat. I will never be a Democrat. I see my race shaping up to be, at least in the primary, as a blue collar working family man versus a white collar elitist here. And, I think I know where the district stands on that. Um, I'm deeply involved. I'm deeply invested in this district. So, hopefully I can make my position clear and make my lifestyle and what I stand for and who I am clear that, we all need to work together and make this a better place for the working family. Um, make it not a place where people want to move away to be successful. They need to be able to be successful here, whether in any industry. I am quite literally a conservative. Um, I want to conserve this way of life that I have for my children and for yours. Um, and me running for office is just taking an opportunity that's before me to do that. Never wanted to run for office, but I think that I can make a difference. And I think I can be successful doing that. I'm running for our small towns, for our children, because if you do anything without our children being the top priority, you're doing everything for nothing, I believe, at least in government. Um, and I'm running for our loggers, fishermen, and our farmers. Um, that is who I'm running for. That is who I love. We're such an ag driven district that I think that it will be my legislative career will be a success because of that. Um, but again, running for our loggers, fishermen, farmers, I don't think there's anybody better that could represent our district because one of my favorite quotes is, "We the unwilling, led by the unknowing, are doing the impossible for the ungrateful." We've done so much for so little for so long that we're qualified to do anything for nothing. Thank you all. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. May it be filled with as little politics as possible and as much family as possible. Thank you so much.